Hey guys, my name is Andrew, and today I'm going to be showing you how to remove the engine from your W210, or in this case an S210 wagon. Specifically, this is the 3.2 liter M112 V6, so let's get into it. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is drain the fluids, and unfortunately I actually already did that off camera because I had to potentially sell the transmission oil pan to somebody who needed it because I don't need this one. But that ended up falling through because the transmission bolt on this is stripped, but that's a long story. Anyway, you need to drain the fluid. So I already drained the engine oil and the transmission oil, and the coolant and the Freon was already gone. So we've taken care of that. So now we can take some parts off the top of the engine. The first one is easy, and that's the engine cover. It simply lifts out of place like that. This one is kind of broken in the back, but there's a clip basically on each of the sides, and it pops off just like that. Next, we're going to do the airbox. I have to have the hood propped up right now because unfortunately I can't put my hood into service position because my garage is too short, at least with the door open, so excuse this mess. But there's these two clips for the mass airflow sensor right here, top and bottom. And then you can kind of slide that out of the way, at least maybe down. And then this airbox actually just pops out. So it's got these little rubber grommets. Just gotta kind of pull on them a little bit. And then if you're careful enough, you can get this hose out with it, which is what we're gonna try to do. And just like that, hose came off, but that's the airbox. On 1999 and newer W210s, you're gonna have this electric fan setup on the V6 cars. On the V8 cars, they have a mechanical fan with a shroud. And then also on the 98 V6 cars, they have a mechanical fan and shroud as well. So in that case, you would need to get the fan clutch tool to get the fan off, and then you can pull the shroud. In this case, it's a lot easier because all we have to do is disconnect the fan from the front and then unclip it and it comes out. So right here, we've got this connector, which should just pull out like that. Okay, next we're gonna get these little clips off the top here. Use a little pry tool, just get them, oh. Not the expected result, but that works as well. And we just pry these out. Okay, now the radiator fan should come right out. Yep, just like that. Now I'm gonna get this core support out, and it's just these little 10mm bolts here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top. We'll get those off real quick. And then there's a 10mm right here on the front. Oh, might have to move the horn out of the way first. Okay, and that should just lift out like that. Want to make sure we keep these rubbers inside the radiator clip, and that's your core support. Now we're going to remove the condenser. These bottom ones are going to be a 19mm, but I only have one 19, but I think we can get away with a 20. So we'll do that. Yeah, that's already loose. The system is already drained, which you're going to want to do prior to doing this, because the last thing you want is Freon and PAG oil going all over the place. Ask me how I know. All right, there's that hose. And then I can't remember which size these are. Oh, 24 and an adjustable wrench. I'll be right back. All right, now that I got the adjustable wrench, break that loose. There we go. At the top of the condenser, we've got two 10mm bolts that we need to remove. Remove these plastic trim pieces, all this air dam stuff from the bottom. We'll go ahead and do that. It's just these little clips. They're super easy. There we go. There's that. Let's see here. I'm learning with you guys. Does the radiator come out with it? No. Ah, there we go. Nice. Okay, cool. Apparently I messed up the radiator right there, bottom right hand corner. And I'm looking at the back of the condenser, and I'm guessing those are what did it. So just be mindful of that. Thankfully, I'm replacing the radiator and the condenser with brand new ones, but that's kind of a bummer. I was hoping to maybe save this radiator and maybe sell it to someone or give it to somebody who needs it, but yeah, probably not usable at this point. I apologize for the somewhat weird angle, but this is what I have to work with. So now we're going to remove the radiator hoses from this side of the radiator. I realize that these are the wrong type of pliers for this. Keep slipping off, but we'll get it. Yeah, like that, just like that. Getting these two off, it's a little 7mm, and usually they're accessible through the bottom, which is the case here. I'm gonna bucket out of the way a little bit. Walk the hose off, try not to splash coolant everywhere as much as we can. And nice and gentle. There we go. Alright, there's the big one. There we go. Alright. Now we can work on these transmission cooler lines. Those are pretty easy. So just as a note of caution, if this isn't obvious, even if your transmission is drained, these lines are still going to bleed fluid. It's a 19mm, by the way. So just keep that in mind. I've got a bucket under here, so we don't have to worry too much about that. But yeah, as you can see, it's gonna leak a little bit, especially this bottom one once we get it. Let's see if we can get to this bottom one here. Yeah, there it is. Break that sucker loose. There we go. That's okay. While we wait for that radiator to drain, I'm gonna get the hood release cable out of the way, since I would like it out of the way anyway when we pull the motor, obviously, so the motor doesn't snag on that. So 10mm right here, and then snake this out. We can get to the cable on the underneath. It's actually pretty easy to pull, and to get this cable out, just pull this little nub right here, right around this clip. It's pretty easy, and then you can pop this off, just like that. I almost forgot, or I guess I did forget. There is one bolt at the bottom of the radiator that holds the transmission line to the front of it, or at least one of the transmission lines. It's a 10mm. Now, if you're living in a climate where you get a lot of rust, this will probably just disintegrate on you, unfortunately. Thankfully, where I live, we don't really have a rust problem. Now the radiator is totally free. Be careful though, once you tilt this thing, some coolant might still come out. So I'm going to tilt it backwards a little bit. Get the low side a little bit higher. There we go. Radiator's out. So we're going to take the belt off now. To do that, we just need a 17mm socket. This is the updated tensioner. The older style has a Torx that sticks out, so you would need an E-Torx, and then you would just stick it on the shaft here, and same idea. Stick this in the off position, and then scoot it back, and then stick a dowel or something. There's a little hole that prevents this tensioner from releasing. That way it stays in place. And that way, if you don't have a dowel here, you won't be able to access the bolts to get the tensioner off. So just keep that in mind. Now, the reason why we're doing this right now is because I'm gonna leave this power steering pump. So this runs the power steering as well as the self-leveling rear suspension. I don't want to have to re-bleed that, so I'm going to unbolt this pump and then just hang it on this side of the car for now. So these bolts are going to be E-Torx E12. So I couldn't see the rest of the bolts, or at least I don't know how many bolts are actually, to be honest, left on that. So I'm going to get the AC pump out of the way. It's going to be E14 E-Torx. And okay, so we can't get this bolt out all the way without moving this tranny line. So we'll get this E10 out of the way. There's that one. Now the AC pump is out of the way. Oh my gosh, we can see we've got some extra bolts. One right here, so we'll get that one out. I apologize, I had to do something else off camera. It was really hard to get to this top bolt, but essentially there's two on the front here. Then there's one on the bottom here. Those are all easy to see. This top one is not. I'll show you where it goes. So that top hole right here, you can see it where my finger is. You basically have to run a bunch of extensions to get to it. But once I figured that out, it wasn't that hard. It's not torqued down very much, but yeah, there's a hidden bolt there. Coming to the back of the motor, what we're gonna do is remove the fuel line here. the brake booster line, this vacuum line here, and then there's another vacuum line on top. We're gonna get rid of those real quick. They're all pretty easy to remove. I'll have to demonstrate this on the other motor, but this brake booster line has these two little clips that you just push together. There we go. Okay, that one's out. Careful though, these brake booster lines are just straight up made out of plastic, so they'll break. So there's that. This line just pulls out of the top, easy peasy. And then this vacuum line that goes in the back of the intake manifold should just pull off. If it breaks, not too worried. I'd rather replace it anyway. There we go. This line is actually in pretty decent shape, it seems. Okay, boom. Okay, now that line's off. This line, I'm gonna show you where it goes because we're gonna try and get this all the way out of the way as well as the brake booster line. Brake booster line is really easy. Some of these cars will have a retention bracket right here to hold the brake booster line. This one doesn't, so we're just gonna pull like that. It comes out. This little grommet, just push it through. It's really easy. It comes right out. Just like that. Boom. And this other vacuum line comes right here. So we should be able to pull this out just like that. And then there is one zip tie. So the zip tie was right here. And it's also kind of clipped into this little grommet. Get that out. And be careful with this line too. Obviously it's plastic as well. And I actually don't know the best way to come out. I think this way will be best. Like that. And then it comes right out. Fuel line's really easy, 17 millimeter right here. I should have pulled the fuel pump fuse and ran the motor to let all the fuel out of the rail, but I didn't do that, so we're probably gonna get a fair amount of fuel out of here, which, yeah, we already got a little squirt there. It's not the end of the world, but it's definitely not ideal. So to get the engine harness out of the way, well, basically the engine harness is gonna stay with the motor, and thankfully everything comes in on this one loom right here. So we just gotta unbury it from the inside of the firewall. Oh, I forgot there is a ground over here, 10 mil. Let's go check that out. The harness does have a ground right here, so let's get rid of that. Now with that ground out of the way, I'm gonna pull this weather sealing up. Just lay it over here for now. And this engine harness should, theoretically, pull out of the way and lay it on top of the motor. Okay, and then we've got this heater hose that goes to the heater core. So we're gonna wanna unclip, get out of the way. Actually, I think this is the return for the heater core. And it would help if my pliers were a little bigger. I don't know where my bigger ones went. So this is more difficult than it should be. There we go, okay. Wow, that was way more difficult than it should have been. Let me just slide that hose off. Just like that. Moving to the underneath of the car, we're very close to having everything out. But we're gonna get this heat shield out. A couple of 8 millimeter little nuts. We're gonna get this clip off here. This is the shifter. I think we can get it with this little sticky thing. Ah, just like that, cool. I found that on these guibos, I guess is what they're called, is to get this 19 millimeter wrench just behind or in front of the sub, or in front of the transmission brace here. Snake it up in there. And you can get it on the bolt back here. And then just run our impact right here. Like that. And now that we have all the bolts out, we can just take this screwdriver and just pry that drive shaft out and make sure it clears. And get it around like that. We might have to get a little more creative than that. There we go. Okay. So now, drive shaft's out of the way. It'll stay in here for the time being, and the transmission will be able to come out. On the driver's side, there's a negative cable right here, and it is an 11 millimeter because why not? Why not throw an 11 millimeter in the mix? If you know the technical reason why, leave a comment down below. If there is absolutely no reason, I would believe you. All right, I'm sorry for the audio. I just realized my thing wasn't plugged in. So anyway, now we're looking at passenger side firewall next to the transmission. And we're gonna get rid of this cover here. 8 millimeter. And that cover will just come right off. And then we've got a little, I think that's a 17. Come on, there we go. And, oop, this is your main positive cable. That goes to the starter. And we'll make sure we keep this washer and this nut here. Of course, we'll get this transmission plug out of here. I'm gonna have to figure out, oh yeah, it's a little wet, but it's not too bad. I'll have to figure out a solution for covering this because it's not supposed to be exposed like that. I don't particularly like that, but anyway, we're gonna get the 13 millimeters off of the transmission and the engine mounts, and that's basically it. We should be ready to pull. I almost forgot. We're gonna wanna get this power steering line out of the way, as well as this bracket. So it's gonna be 10 millimeter, and another 10 millimeter back there for this line. And then underneath is another 10 millimeter. I'll do that off camera real quick. My attempt to avoid losing power steering / self-leveling suspension fluid has proved futile. In order to move this line out of the way, I did have to disconnect it from the line down there, which I think is the return. So not a big deal. I plugged it with a big bolt, and it doesn't look like we're losing any more fluid, but I am gonna have to buy some more of that and bleed the system. It's not really a big deal, but yeah, just one more thing we gotta take care of. So now we have the engine hoist hooked up to the motor. I've got this leveler here, and most of the weight's gonna be in the back. This is currently set for when I pulled the V8, so I think we're gonna have to drag it back a little bit more because there's less weight on the front of this V6, obviously. But we'll get a feel for that once we start getting it in the air. But I'm gonna go underneath and break the 13 millimeter bolts loose on the motor mounts and the transmission mount. That's 2 bolts on this cross member here for the transmission. And then on each side of the subframe, right next to the control arm bushing here, you're gonna have some 13 millimeters for the motor mounts. And they should be super tight. And they're not, thank goodness. All right, I've enlisted the help of my father-in-law. It's recommended you do this with 2 people, just be safe and always wear flip-flops. All right, we're gonna go up and just see where the motor's at as far as the balance goes. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get any more weight on the front of it. There we go. Okay, I think, yeah, transmission's off, so we'll go up a little bit. Get this power steering pump. Let's try, yeah, go that way. There we go. All right, hold on, stay still. Let's see, what are we holding? Oh, I think it's not enough weight on the back or on the front. I'm just gonna keep.
Yeah, there's no weight on the front.
Yeah. Oh. Let me see, I might need to pull it down a little bit on this. Okay, hold on. Let's see what it is. It's this transmission. I forgot to pull the exhaust brackets. It's keeping it from moving. Hey. Yeah. That's better. Okay. I feel good about that. Get that down. There we go. All right. All right. We should be able to come back. Oh, hold on. I guess it wasn't quite high enough. There we go.
You should be out of there now.
All right. Yeah.
not hung up by anything.
Nope. Yeah, bring it back. And turn it over. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is how you remove an M112 from a W210/S210. I'm very clearly a professional. Feel free to judge me in the comments. If you have anything to add to this video, let's talk about that below. I'll pin any good comments. I'm sure I forgot things, and you know how it is. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully it's helpful to you. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.